after Christmas I'll return to biblical meditations, but just maybe one or two more reflections on the story we have to tell. I felt I would love to tell you about my visit to China. I went really to look around and to see what God was doing during a sabbatical time. It was a massive privilege. I went to Tiananmen Square, I walked on the Great Wall of China, went to the Ming tombs, went to the Forbidden City. You saw some phenomenal sights, but to be honest, they are fairly incidental compared with the people I met. I think the most memorable was a man called Alan Yuan. He was 79 when we met him. He had been put in prison by the communists when he was 44. He was a pastor, wonderfully godly man, and he'd been in prison for 21 years. They'd let him out when he was 65. And he had 6 children. His wife had been invited by a number of godly men to marry her and look after her and her 6 kids. But she said no, he could still be alive. So she kept on going alone while he was there. They didn't have the contact. She didn't know if he was alive. And then when he was 65, they let him out, think, well, he's finished now. I met him when he was 79. He was back with his wife, and he came to collect Bibles from us. We were back in those days where Bibles were being smuggled into China. It was a great joy to meet him and to ask him his experience. He came to our hotel room, sat on the floor, I remember, in our fairly small hotel room, and we sat and talked. And, one asked him loads of questions, and he was just radiant. His face, I'll never forget his radiant, glorious face. When I said, it's been so hard for you, he said, oh, nothing compares with the cross. He said after 21 years, all he could remember was the old rugged cross and Psalm 23 set to music. But he never lost his faith. In fact, after I'd come home when he was aged 82, a few years later, I saw an article in a Christian magazine saying he was under house arrest for baptizing 400 people one day. Imagine, they thought he was finished when he was 65. Now he's 82. Since then he's gone to glory. But what a privilege. And while I was in China, I went to Shanghai and met there what they called a Bible woman. She wanted to just be called Auntie. She also came to collect Bibles from us. It was amazing. She had been 25 years in prison, been beaten several times, had her head shaved. Extraordinary experiences of God, quite phenomenal. And since she'd been out, she now travels widely to share the good news of Jesus. She said she takes long trips up into the north of China, where it's bitterly cold, gathered with crowds of up to 8,000 in the woods where they're gathered secretly. Extraordinary, beautiful woman of God. These people that have been through so much. She said, I said, what can we do for you? She said, don't send money, it corrupts us. Pray for us. She said, we share our clothes, we share our food. And it's just extraordinary. And they said, if you go to the official church, which I wanted to go to, don't say anything about us. And so we went to the official church, and they didn't preach anything at all. And a Chinese guy came and sat next to us, and afterwards there was a little come and drink tea with us, and they were saying, see, there's no persecution in China, this church is open. It was packed, but there was no gospel there. But it was wonderful to have met these godly people, men and women, serving God in that tremendous, wonderful church that God has blessed and kept on multiplying. I've always been fascinated about the church in China ever since reading the story of Hudson Taylor, and to actually meet some modern Christians who looked like people from the book of Acts was a massive, massive privilege. I thank God for Alan Yuan and Auntie, these wonderful people.